I'm Olivia, 34 years old, working in finance at a large company. I've been married to Ethan for 6 years. At first our marriage was nothing special, but it wasn't terrible either. We weren't the most romantic couple, but I believed we shared the same goal: building a stable family and moving forward together. However, things gradually changed, in ways I never expected. 2 years ago, Ethan decided to quit his job, saying he wanted to start his own business. He claimed he was tired of working for others and wanted a career of his own. I fully supported him, though I had some concerns deep down. I trusted my husband's abilities and was willing to support him in the early stages, but as time went by, nothing went according to plan. At first, Ethan spent hours in front of his computer, researching business ideas. He talked about big plans, about how one day we wouldn't have to worry about finances anymore. But after a few months, our savings began to dwindle. I suggested he find a part-time job to ease the financial burden, but Ethan strongly opposed the idea. "If I go back to work, it's like admitting failure. Don't you believe in me?" He looked at me with reproachful eyes. I didn't want to argue. I just thought that if I could temporarily shoulder the financial burden, things might improve. But then a year passed, and then 2. Ethan still hadn't made a single dollar from his business while I was covering all our expenses: rent, utilities, groceries, everything. I tried not to complain, just hoping things would eventually get better. But the problem wasn't just financial. My in-laws, especially my mother-in-law and Ethan's younger sister, made me feel suffocated. They lived in an old house in the suburbs, about a 15-minute drive from us. At first I thought maintaining a good relationship with them was necessary, but over time, I realized I was nothing more than an outsider in their eyes. Every time we visited, I felt an overwhelming tension in the air. My mother-in-law Linda was a conservative woman who believed her son was the most wonderful man in the world. His sister Sophie never did anything but always expected to be taken care of. I vividly remember the first time I realized I wasn't welcome in their family. "Olivia, aren't you going to help?" Linda stared at me as I stood in the kitchen, while Sophie sat there scrolling through her phone, not lifting a finger. I smiled politely, trying not to take it personally. I was used to such remarks. But things gradually escalated when they started taking advantage of me financially. At first it was just small hints. "Ethan, the house needs roof repairs. Can you two help out a little?" "Olivia, I need to buy some things urgently. Can I borrow a few $100s?" But it didn't stop there. One day while we were at Linda's house, Sophie suddenly turned to me and said casually, "Can you lend me $600? I need to buy a birthday gift for a friend." I was stunned. $600? What are you buying?" "A designer handbag, but it's not that expensive," Sophie shrugged, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. Before I could respond, Ethan spoke up. "Olivia, just give it to her, it's no big deal." I turned to look at my husband, unable to believe he had just said that. "Ethan, do you even realize whose money this is? I'm the only one making money in this house." My mother-in-law shot me a displeased look. "Oh, come on, why are you making such a fuss? What kind of daughter-in-law are you to be so stingy? Your husband is the head of the family. What's wrong with him taking care of his sister?" For the first time in my life, I couldn't hold back anymore. "With all due respect, Linda, Ethan hasn't made a single dollar. Do you have any idea that I've been covering all expenses for years? We're barely making ends meet, and now you expect me to give Sophie money for a handbag?" Sophie looked at me with an indignant expression, as if I had just robbed her of something she rightfully deserved. "Come on, Olivia, why are you making such a big deal out of this?" Ethan sighed, placing a hand on my shoulder. "It's just a little help for my sister. What's the harm?" I let out a dry laugh. I no longer recognized the man in front of me. The husband I once loved and trusted now saw me as nothing more than an ATM. At that moment I knew I couldn't continue like this forever. I had to do something, but I didn't know where to start. I only knew one thing: I was exhausted. I began to realize how blind I had been all these years. I had sacrificed too much for a man who didn't appreciate me, for a family that saw me as nothing but a financial resource. But even with all my disappointment, I still lacked the motivation to walk away. Until, one day, Ethan unintentionally helped me make my final decision. It was a Saturday afternoon. I had just gotten off work and was hoping for a quiet evening at home to unwind after a long week. But as soon as I walked in, I saw Ethan sitting on the couch, arms crossed, his face sour. "Are you staying home tonight?" His tone was full of irritation. I set my bag down and raised an eyebrow at him. Is there a problem? My mom wants us to have dinner with the family. She said she prepared a special meal. My heart sank. I was all too familiar with these dinners. A special meal meant another night of scrutiny, criticism, and possibly more demands for money. I had no desire to go through that again. You go ahead, I'm tired. Ethan stared at me as if I had just said something unbelievable. Olivia, a wife is supposed to listen to her husband. You can't just refuse like that. I let out a short, weary laugh. Oh really? Then tell me, Ethan, have you ever come with me to visit my parents? They live less than 30 minutes away, yet in 6 years you've never willingly gone there? That's different, he snapped. I folded my arms and looked at him calmly. No, Ethan, it's not different. You just want me to cater to your family while completely disregarding mine. He was silent for a moment, then suddenly lifted his chin, his tone turning defiant. If you keep acting like this, maybe we can't live together anymore. Do you want a divorce? I blinked, unable to believe my ears. I hadn't expected him to throw that word around so casually, as if he was hoping I'd panic and beg him to stay. But instead, I felt something entirely different. Relief. For the first time in years, I looked at Ethan and realized I didn't love him anymore. Not because of his failed career, not even because of his toxic family, but because he was no longer the partner I once trusted. I smiled. A small but meaningful smile. You're right, we can't keep living like this. Ethan raised an eyebrow, probably not expecting me to be so calm. Wait, what are you saying? Let's get a divorce. I watched as pure confusion washed over his face. Maybe he had never imagined that I would actually choose this path. He stammered. You're not serious, are you? I stood up straight and picked up my bag. Completely serious. I walked out of the room, leaving him sitting there stunned. From that day on, I no longer concerned myself with Ethan. I had a more important decision to focus on: preparing for my new life. I quietly opened a separate savings account. Each month I transferred money into it little by little, cutting down expenses as much as possible to build up enough funds. I wasn't naive anymore. I knew I had to leave this marriage the smart way. I also started researching homeownership. I didn't want to just leave and rent a tiny apartment. I wanted a place that was truly mine, a space where I could be in control of my own life, free from anyone's influence. Every weekend I quietly went to look at houses. No one knew about this plan except my parents. They were very worried when they found out, but they fully supported me. You've endured enough. My mom held my hand, her eyes filled with concern. I don't want you to keep living like this. I smiled reassuringly at her. I don't want that either, Mom. As time passed, I gradually moved some of my belongings to my parents' house. I used the excuse of decluttering to make the apartment feel less cramped, and as usual, Ethan didn't even notice. He was too busy indulging in his delusions, convinced that I would never dare to leave him. But I was ready. After months of searching, I found the perfect house. It wasn't too big, but it was just right. Safe and comfortable. A quiet space where I could start over. Ugh. And then, there was only one thing left to do: leave. I waited until the weekend, when Ethan went to visit his mother and Sophie. As soon as he left, I sprang into action. I packed up the last of my things, carefully arranging everything. This apartment had never truly felt like home to me, and now, there was no reason for me to stay. Once everything was done, I stood in the middle of the living room, looking around one last time. I didn't feel sad, nor did I feel regret. The only thing I felt was freedom. I took out my phone and sent Ethan a short message. I'm gone. Don't look for me. Then, I stepped outside, closed the door behind me, and walked into my new life. Ethan returned late Sunday evening, just as dusk was settling in. He unlocked the door as usual, but the moment he turned on the lights, he froze. The apartment was empty. My belongings were gone, my clothes no longer in the closet. There was no trace of me left in that space. I could picture him pacing through the apartment, confusion creeping in as he stared at the bare shelves, the cold bedroom, and the eerie silence that filled the air. His mind must have been racing with questions. But the one truth he couldn't escape was this: I was gone. My phone buzzed, right on cue. Olivia, where are you? I picked up slowly, keeping my voice calm. I've moved out. There was silence on the other end for a few seconds before Ethan let out a forced laugh. You're joking, right? Where would you go? This is your home. I leaned back in my chair, glancing around my new house. No, my new home. No, Ethan, this was never my home. We're divorced. I filed the papers and it's all finalized. What? His voice cracked. That's impossible. When did you do this? Did you really not notice? While you were busy assuming I'd always be here, I was preparing for this moment. No way, Olivia, you can't just leave like this. We haven't even talked things through. I let out a dry laugh. I spent years trying to talk, Ethan, but you never truly listened. I ended the call. I knew Ethan wouldn't stop there, and I was right. The next morning, as I was preparing breakfast, the doorbell rang. I glanced at the security camera screen and sighed. Ethan was standing outside with his mother Linda and his sister Sophie. I stepped out, maintaining my composure. Olivia, you think you can just walk away like this? Ethan yelled. I crossed my arms. I didn't just think. I did. Linda stepped forward, wearing that fake sweet smile I had grown so accustomed to. Olivia, my dear daughter-in-law, there's no need to make things so serious. This is all just a misunderstanding. I raised an eyebrow. A misunderstanding? What do you mean? Sophie crossed her arms, her tone sulky. This whole divorce thing is meaningless. You know Ethan needs you, Mom needs you, I need you too. I let out a laugh. Oh, now you realize my value? Funny how when I was there you all treated me like an ATM, but now that I'm gone, suddenly I'm important? Ethan took a deep breath as if trying to control himself. Olivia, stop being childish. You can be mad, you can blame me, but that doesn't change the fact that we are a family, and family doesn't abandon each other. I looked straight into his eyes. Really? Where were you when I needed respect? When I needed a husband who stood by me, what did you do? Don't talk to me about family when you never truly considered me a part of it. Linda's expression suddenly changed, her face twisting with irritation. Watch your tone, Olivia. After all, you've been living off our family for years. My eyes widened in disbelief. Living off your family? Who paid the rent? Who covered every single expense? Who carried all the financial burdens while your son sat around daydreaming? Linda opened her mouth but had no response. Sophie mumbled under her breath. But your new house is big. You could give us a room. I laughed. And why would I do that? Sophie shrugged. Because you're the only one with money. Her response made me shake my head in disbelief. And that's exactly the problem. I was never part of this family. I was just a financial resource for all of you. Ethan exhaled sharply. Fine, Olivia, if you don't want to help them, at least let me inside so we can talk. I slowly shook my head. None of you are coming in. You can't do this. I didn't reply. I simply stepped forward, locking eyes with Ethan. Listen to me, Ethan. This is my house. I left your life, and you have no right here anymore. Accept that. Ethan clenched his fists, but before he could react, a voice came from behind me. Is there a problem, sweetheart? I turned around and saw my father standing there, his gaze calm but firm. It's nothing, Dad, I smiled. My father looked at Ethan. Why are you still here? My daughter has made her decision, and I suggest you respect it. Linda stammered. But we're family. My father smirked. Family? I've never seen anyone treat my daughter the way you did and still call it family. Before Ethan could respond, a police car unexpectedly pulled up in front of my house. I had anticipated this situation and called the police ahead of time. 2 officers stepped out and approached us. What's going on here? I stepped forward, my voice steady. These people are harassing me. I've asked them to leave, but they refuse. One of the officers nodded and turned to Ethan. Do you hear that? She doesn't want you here. Ethan opened his mouth but then hesitated and stepped back. Linda and Sophie looked unsettled, but in the end, they had no choice but to follow Ethan and leave. I stood there, watching them disappear from sight, feeling an overwhelming sense of relief. I had done it. I was finally free from them. Now my real life was about to begin. Life doesn't always go as planned, but the most important thing is knowing when to let go and reclaim yourself. Olivia spent years sacrificing for a relationship that no longer had value, being taken advantage of by people who saw her only as a source of money. But when she realized her own worth, she found the courage to stand up, walk away, and build a new life. Olivia's story is a reminder that no one has the right to control your life, and sometimes the best thing you can do for yourself is to choose freedom. What do you think about Olivia's story? If you were in her situation, what would you do? Share your thoughts in the comments. Don't forget to follow the channel so you don't miss more compelling stories about life and family.